here. But we're going to start with LMU. The Lions are another team that we have to kind of keep an eye on. Now, they are a team that really hasn't been able to really break through in a significant way, not like USF has or even Santa Clara has over the last few years. But it does seem like that there is an identity being built at the stage. Stan Johnson in year 6 with the Lions. And it almost, to me, it feels like it's a defensive first mindset. And this roster is starting to maybe fit a little bit more to what the end goal is.
I think you look at LMU, you've rarely had to question like their defensive effort, process, kind of what they want to get out of their program. But when you consider like some of the roadblocks that have kept them from being those USFs, those Santa Claras, it's offense. And it's funny how we make all these complex arguments about what basketball is, what certain basketball teams are, and then you get to the point where LMU just has to make some shots. Like, it's just the ball has to go in the hoop for the Lions. And yeah, that sounds like really high-level analysis for everyone at home. I know you guys are riveting over that, but still, like for LMU, it's as simple as, can you get consistent scoring? Because so many times the offense got bogged down, even with capable players. So you have the Javon Porters, the Alex Merkvaladzes, but the offense still didn't necessarily click into high gear. And this year you add guys like Rodney Brown Jr. You have another year for MJ Amy. Who are going to be some of the guys that kind of step up continually to give the shot in the arm for LMU this year?
And I think it's also the level of guys that they're starting to bring in. You mentioned Rodney Brown coming over for Virginia Tech, was at Cal before that, talked about the likes of MJ Amy coming from San Jose State, but a high-level scorer at San Jose State. Took him a little bit of time to kind of get some comfort, but it seems like that's changed. We'll talk with Stan Johnson a little bit in detail about that. But again, like this team was third in the WCC in opponent's field goal percentage behind only Gonzaga and St. Mary's.
That's good.
This was a team that was 11-6 at home, so defended the home court well, beat Santa Clara there, beat Oregon State there, beat Nevada, and at a point where Nevada was maybe the hottest team in all of college basketball at that stage. So the pieces are there, and even like they took St. Mary's down to the wire in that season finale in LA. The Lions seem like they're just on the cusp, and we're just about to maybe see what they're fully capable of doing.
It's the age-old question, at least for me right now. Can the Lions be more than just a pain in the side of a lot of other teams? So you think of Santa Clara losing last year at LMU, for example. Like, that's a loss that hurts them and their prospects are trying to go to the NCAA tournament. Can LMU just be more than a team that just upsets people on any given day? For me, it's not necessarily about how high they are or how low they are. It's how consistent they are. For me, that's going to be the thing I look at the most with the Lions. Can they have a consistent enough offense? Can they have consistent enough production? Yep. And can they find a way to just kind of, while still trying to build who they are and embrace who they are, get those additional elements in the building, have it all work together? Because for me, it's like they've had certain like stirs to the drink, but it hasn't all come together. We've seen it for a couple of years on end now where they're hovering around 500. They win some good games. They blow some other games that they're not supposed to. And now you're just looking for the right mix. And I think it's getting to be go time in terms of finding that mix.
Well, enough of us talking about this. Let's hear from Stan Johnson. This was an interview we recorded a few days ago. So let's kind of dive into that and what Stan Johnson sees as the prospects for this Lions team this season. We're continuing our interviews going through the WCC preview. We're going to be focused on LMU and head is helm for the Lions. All right, we're continuing our interviews going through the WCC, and this preview we're going to be focused on LMU, and head coach Stan Johnson is joining us, his 6th year at the helm for the Lions. Coach, this is a team, your squad was really a kind of a battler, I felt like, all year last year. You were 70-15 overall, 8-10 in WCC play. Some nice wins. You defended the home court well. But going into this year, it's a lot of new faces again, as is kind of the norm for college basketball at this stage in college athletics. As you've started to kind of get through the recruiting class, have started to do some practices over the summer, getting back to classes, whatnot. How are you feeling about the roster so far this year?
Well, so far so good. You know, we like our team. Obviously it's early. We're still trying to figure each other out, but there's some things that we really like. You know, we're a lot longer and bigger than probably what we've been especially on the perimeter, a lot more athletic. It's probably the most athletic team we've had. I like our depth. I thought that, we've really lifted the floor of our team. When you talk about not just who could possibly start, but the guys you have coming off the bench, the guys at the end of the bench, whoever those guys are going to be, that's still yet to be determined. But I think, it's the deepest team we've had, and just in terms of talent. All 13 guys could help us. Now, all 13 guys can't play, but I think, from a practice standpoint and a competitive standpoint, that's been fun to see. And, you got more guys on their toes that way. So, obviously we haven't played in any games. We have a long way to go, but I like the feel of this group and the eagerness. It's one of the younger teams, probably the youngest team we've had, really, when you think about how many guys that have really played at their former place or here. And college basketball, you want to get old and stay old, but there is something good about youth. There's the eyes are wide open, and there's not a man. I've seen this, done that. There's a newness to everything that I think really helps the overall approach and what we're trying to do.
Stan, the last time we kind of left off at the WCC tournament, you kind of mentioned that this is still the team and roster and program is along the right track. From what you've seen from this new group, both in terms of the returners and the newcomers, what about their offseason preparation and work has continued that belief over the course of the offseason?
Well, I mean, it's not really one thing or the other. I mean, it's just a plan and a process and what we're following to get where we want to go. This group's been no different. These guys are ultra competitive. They've worked their tails off in the summer, not only on the floor, but to try to get to know each other better. Obviously, like everybody goes through, you're putting teams together, instead of programs sometimes because there's so many new guys. So there's a cohesiveness and a chemistry and a bond that still has to be formed. And I think these guys have made a commitment to try to do that. And, they've allowed us to coach them. They compete at a high level. And, there's a hunger there. So, all the signs are there and they're good. It doesn't mean we're doing everything good. I don't know if we're doing anything good right now. But we're trying to get there. And there's a willingness and an eagerness to do that. Again, all these programs, I say it all the time. It's like people love the ending, and they always talk about this coach is doing that and that coach in this program. But, if you look at a lot of these places, it's how it's been built and the time it took to be built. Usually once you've arrived, it's like, wow, they're this and they're that. But we're still in the process of what we're doing, and we feel really good about that process.
Now, one of the players that you were able to bring in that I think jumped out to a lot of people was Jalen Shelley coming over from USC, and just the potential that he has, because it seems like because he's long, agile, athletic, like he can do so many different things on the floor. With that kind of like that addition of someone, you talked about just the athleticism bar has kind of been raised so far this season. What has been kind of like the early experience of seeing Jalen on the floor and how he's been able to mesh with the group?
Yeah, the thing that's just striking about him is just how big he is. For a wing, you don't realize the size that he has. And in our offense, really, he could play the 2 or the 3 or the 4. You can really move him around. But he's got tremendous size. He's good with the ball. Can really get downhill. Plays above the rim. He's an unselfish kid. And he's one of those guys, he's really talented. But like I was saying earlier, he's only a sophomore, and he played sparingly at USC, although he was a highly rated guy coming out of high school. We really think a lot of him. and we're excited about him. But same thing, there's a learning curve to, okay, now being impactful and being a double-digit scorer. You know, these are all, everything he does will be the first time he's done it in college. You know, so there's a learning curve to that. But I love the person that he is and the teammate that he is. And, you know, when he got here, you know, his weight wasn't where we wanted it to be. I mean, he's already put on 12, 13 pounds in the last 10 months. You know, so I think that's going to be a great thing. His body, he looks great. He's stronger and will only help in his game. But he's somebody we're really excited about.
And so Zach mentioned obviously a newcomer. In my case, I'm going to go to someone who's a returner. You've lauded MJ Amy's praises, and rightfully so. And I kind of look at him and I view his purpose and intent as something that sticks out to me, at least. And you have explained that his consistency and the ability to take the next step in that department will raise this program ceiling. I was wondering, how have you seen his development take shape over the course of this offseason, whether it be on the court, off the court leadership? What have you seen from MJ Amy that has you excited for what he can bring to the table this year?
Yeah, well, you know, the thing with MJ, man, I've said it all along, I don't know if I've been around a better person, you know, just a human being. You know, his energy, I just love. You know, I love high energy guys. And the thing I appreciate most about him is, regardless if the shot's going in, regardless if he's having a bad day, you can always count that he's going to give you everything he's got in his body. And, you know, that's something people really respect, and his teammates do, and our coaches do. You know, MJ at San Jose State was one of the premier scorers in the Mountain West. And, you know, the transfer thing sometimes is almost like the junior college thing back in the day. You know, there was a thing, you know, that, you know, sometimes JUCO guys, it could take them a semester for it to really click. Some of them needed the year. You know, NJ showed some glimpses here. We had a 5-6 game stretch where he was really good in conference, and then he faded a little bit. But I think he's a guy that needed the year. You know, as I see him now, he's so much more comfortable. He's not thinking as much. He can just be him. So if we can have a consistent MJ Amy, the guy that, you know, can score in bunches and defend like he's capable of defending, you know, those will be great things for us moving forward.
I mean, like, this is a team that really kind of hung its hat on that defense a year ago. You think about the fact that this was a team that was third in opponent field goal percentage in the WCC, and it was really a collective effort. It really felt like there wasn't like one like guy that kind of like stood out on that front. And you did bring in someone who I know a lot of people are high on especially on the defensive end. That's Nikel Shelton, maybe one of the older guys you're going to have on this team. Just kind of talk about a little bit the way you've kind of started to have a little bit of this defensive first mentality on this squad, and how Nikel kind of fits into that.
Yeah, well, you know, our identity here is, you know, we want to defend, rebound, run. And again, you've got to have the type of players to do so. And again, as we've built, you know, our program is morphing into, you know, who we want to be in terms of our identity, you know, and he's a guy that fits that. You know, he can guard multiple positions. He's a tremendous shot blocker for a guard. You know, he's got long arms, good on the ball, gets a lot of deflections. So I think the way we want to play, and, you know, how we play the pick and roll, and how we want to compete on the ball, he's a perfect fit. You know, the other thing I like about him, he's a very good defensive rebounding guard. And, you know, I thought a year ago, you know, as we got towards the end of the season, you know, our defensive rebounding, you know, kind of sputtered a little bit. But he's a guy that can help us on the glass as well. And then, you know, obviously if he's doing that, the ball's in his hands and he's able to start the break. So the way we want to play and how we want to compete and how our system's built defensively, you know, he's got a chance to really impact us at a high level. And that's kind of what we saw when we were recruiting him.
Another guy who I kind of view as someone who could give the program a shot in the arm is Rodney Brown Jr. And I covered Rodney as a freshman when he was at Cal. So he had the ability to score at all three levels, but maybe hasn't necessarily unleashed everything in his repertoire. What have you kind of noticed from his time when you were scouting him coming out of the portal at Virginia Tech to now that's like, okay, Rodney Brown can not only elevate where our versatility can be defensively, but kind of be the shot in the arm that the offense, if it's in trouble, that he can go out and get a bucket?
Yeah, Rodney, we always felt like he was a super talented guy. His first year at Cal, I mean, he played 14 minutes a game as a freshman, and then he decided to go to Virginia Tech and didn't play as much as he would have liked. But again, another guy I've been impressed with, just his length. The Rodney has got tremendous skill, and he's got a great feel for the game offensively. I'm on him this year is just be aggressive, man. Hunt good shots, take good shots. And that's different from him for him because he hasn't been in that role. Again, another guy who, he's been in 2 years of college, but his experience is not that much on the floor. So trying to shift his mindset of just being a guy out there to a guy who's out there helping us win. By making the right plays and making perimeter shots. But, for a guy 6'6", he can play in pick and rolls. He's a very good passer. He can read the defense. He's a very good shooter. And that's one thing we really need from him to knock down open shots. So I'm actually excited for Rodney. I feel like he feels like he's found a home, and, hopefully this will be a great year for him to kind of really kickstart his career collegiately in terms of what it should be.
Now, last year, one of the things you guys did really well was you defended the home court really well, like 11-6 at home, some big wins, Oregon State, you beat Santa Clara down there, got Nevada, some big wins, but the challenges were on the road. And obviously there's a little bit of a different group with that you have this year, but how do you kind of like make sure that the success you did have at home or the things that did work well when you're at Gersten can carry on when you do play away, especially in conference where you're obviously like the competition in the WCC is going to be just as tough as ever?
Yeah. I don't know. I felt like for the most part, I thought our defense traveled. But, we were in a lot of games too that were nip and tuck. And sometimes even the score in the end doesn't indicate that. But I thought, last year, two things really hurt us. We did not shoot the ball well, and we were not a very good offensive rebounding team. And that's, we were pretty big. We sent three guys back in transition just to set up our defense. But, you can't shoot the ball from three like we did and not rebound it at a high level. So again, for those things to change, your defense has to be special, and you got to be able to make shots and give yourself second opportunities. And I'm hoping that this group we've assembled with the athleticism and the size that we have will make more shots, and we'll get more offensive rebounds. And if we can do that, you got a chance to be successful on the road. But winning on the road is hard. Whether it's in the NBA or in college, it's hard to do, but it's something we certainly have to be better at.
I kind of want to peel the curtain back a little bit and think a little more big picture, because when I've heard of what you're trying to envision for this program, I've heard the likes of the Steve Fisher San Diego State program. When you look at the building blocks that you've already built and the ones that you're trying to find and fine tune, what's the process like in terms of leaning on your circle, leaning on the coaches that you've interacted with, or any administrators or your network in terms of, okay, I still want to be a Stan Johnson driven team. I still want my identity on this, but how do you kind of welcome the ideas that come out from left field, right field? How do you kind of almost polish things together in terms of finding the right balance of what you want to do, but also invite some new ideas into the building and trying to be a program to the standard of Steve Fisher's Aztecs?
Yeah, well, you know what? We're always collaborative here. Every year, every day, we're trying to get better. I know that sounds cliche, But the things that we believe in, we have to have extreme ownership of that, and really be good at that. And, whether it's me going and spending time with Coach Sampson in Houston or whatever, we're always looking for ways to improve our program. That being said, ideas are good, but you can also get stretched thin trying to do everything. There's certain things that you have to master. There's certain things that good programs, winning programs, do consistently. There's certain things that have to be done while you're rebuilding something. Again, if Coach Fisher, when he took over San Diego State, you look at just how they systematically built that and how long it took to do that. You look at Coach Mosier at Loyola Chicago. How many years it took to get where they were. You study like a program like St. Bonaventure and what Coach Schmidt has done there. Coach Sampson in Washington State, and that's what I'm saying. In the process, sometimes if you're not careful, you forget about some of the good that's happening. It's really hard in our league with any good league to just go boom. It takes time. You look at what Coach Herb has done in, I don't know, his 9th or 10th year. It's been this systematic, and we feel like we've done that. We feel like along the way, we've had some major wins and historic things have been happening. There's been times where there's been a little setback. Nothing is a straight line, so every year it's how can we continue to tighten up what we're doing, making sure we don't lose sight of the big picture where you start to compromise what you do daily. And I think I'm giving you some of those examples because for me, I've really studied that. And it doesn't mean because it happened there, it's going to happen here. But it's just being consistent every day in what you do and what you believe in, and continuing to create that culture and continue to create the habits. And then hopefully, you continue to add players, better players, good players. And then those players have to come together. And then all of a sudden, man, you got to, things can happen. But it's a lot of work, but my focus has just really been every single day. We can't worry about tomorrow. It hasn't come. We can't do anything by yesterday, but how can we be present? And if you can just stay present and stay consistent and just keep chopping at it, eventually the tree will fall. But we don't want to take any shortcuts, and we want to do things the right way. And, along the way, you got to have some luck too. That's all part of it.
And you talk about the process, and it does take time. And obviously building a program does take time. But one of the things that is probably a little bit more exciting we talked about just as we were coming on is that the Gerson Pavilion renovations are near complete. There's a few minor things, but obviously this has been a few-year process to kind of get that facility up to where it's now at a more competitive level with obviously like everyone across college basketball. Kind of talk about just the excitement that there has been from not only some of the players, coaches, like everyone about just the fact that this is now near completion.
Yeah, it's an awesome facility. Again, this is something we've been working on since we got here, 5 years ago. And to see it at this stage is awesome. And took a lot of people, some great donors, our university who's committed. Our athletic director, Craig Pentons, did a great job with the vision. Such a team effort. And, when you walk in here and our players, our film room, the office spaces, the academic center, the meal room for men's and women's basketball, it's high level. And I think it's going to add to the attraction of LMU. I think it's a great statement in how committed we are, where we're going. But it's also a highlight of what we're building and how far we've come over the last 5 years. So I know our players love it. Our coaches love it. And, I think it's going to be a great thing as we start to usher in recruits and fans and all those things.
All right. Hearing from from Stan Johnson. We know that this is a more athletic team than we have seen in the past, that there is some key experience returning for this squad. And I think like he's trying to be careful with how he's kind of like leaning out the expectations, because we have seen in any of these numbers of the first 5 years of Stan Johnson's tenure is that we've seen injuries happen. We've seen a lot of things kind of go sideways or not quite go the way they've wanted. We've seen one really good year with a Cam Shelton led team from LMU understand, but we're waiting to see them take that next step. They were above 500 last year. We haven't seen them even have consecutive above 500 seasons since the early 90s. I think that's very possible for this year's team. I think it's possible that we see that leap. And honestly, it does feel like the athleticism and the defensive presence that this team has and is going to take a step up this season.
So I know this isn't consistent with a take that's going to come later in the show, but I'm a big like prove it guy. Like until you've done it, I can't wholly convince myself that you can do more than you've shown. And you mentioned circumstances, injuries, inconsistencies, the whole 9 yards really for LMU as to why they haven't graduated into the next tier of USF, Santa Clara, and others. I can't sit here and convince myself that this year is meaningfully different. And I don't mean that to say that they can't realize their potential and go out and play, but I don't understand like what's been game breaking from last year to this year to say, yes, they're going to be pencil them in for 4th or 5th place. Like I can't sit here today and say that. Like, do they have enough offense? We don't know. Can they continue to create? Can they stop stumbling over themselves against teams they're supposed to beat? I can't sit here and say that they won't. So for me, considering at least from my perspective, the mid pack of the WCC is going to be a lot more compact this year. I don't think Washington State will be as bad as they were last year. I think Oregon State will be fine. I don't think they'll be groundbreaking. You think of the LMU's right in that pack. The floor to me is 7th to 8th again. And look, people may not like that, but to me, they've taken their medicine. Now they have to go prove that they've actually improved. So ceiling, everything goes right. I think they can get 5th. But to me, it's a tall mountain to climb and one where I don't even think they've gotten to the campsite yet.
All right. I mean, I think I do agree with you on just those two things. I think just with the way we're looking at it is different, is very different. Like I agree with you. LMU still has to prove it. They still have to show me that they can be better than the 8-10 they were in league last year. They still have to prove to me that they can be better than the 17-15 that they were last year. There is still a lot that team needs to be more consistent on. But a lot of the things that I looked back to even a few years ago, what they didn't do well last year, they did actually address some of those concerns. They did take care of the ball better than they did a couple of years ago, which was a massive boost for them. Like this was a team that really just was turnover prone. And that last year, that was fixed. The defense was consistent all year long, regardless of where they went. Like they played defense well at Gonzaga. Like they were playing really good defense anywhere they went. The defense traveled. What to your point is the offense did not. The offense did not travel, and the offense wasn't even always there at home.
Yeah.
And if they can make enough buckets, if they can get enough offense, and I do think they have improved at least slightly on that. The Jalen Shelley one, I think, is going to be the biggest telling sign because he can be such the difference maker for them. Because if he starts to show any level of the potential that we think he has, that's a potential all WCC first teamer that they have on their squad, which I would not have said about, say, Javon Porter a year ago, because we had seen that even when he was at Pepperdine, that was not a very successful team. But Shelley coming from USC, we've seen actually former USC players have a lot of success in the WCC. Malik Thomas comes to mind on that front, that those guys can translate. And at least I want to try to be the optimist because it's still the preseason, because nothing's happened yet. I'm trying to be the optimist about LMU. I get the realism and what is actually happening with that program, that they still need to get over that hump, get over the Washington States, the Oregon States. And maybe 5th is about the ceiling. I kind of agree with you there, because obviously we talked like the top 3 are kind of already spoken for. 4th is maybe we can talk about like that's a Santa Clara or an Oregon State, maybe hell, even I don't even know, maybe even a San Diego somehow sneak all the way up there based on what they've been able to bring in. But LMU, yeah, it's like they're probably a fifth is probably the ceiling. They're probably, I would probably even say they're probably going to finish sixth. That if I was starting to make my preseason rankings now, it's like six feels about right for an LMU squad.
Yeah, I mean, the words that have always come to mind about LMU the last few years is potential. Like they bring in some nice ingredients and then they just don't make the right meal of it, and for any numerous amount of reasons. And I think earlier in the show, can they be more than just a thorn in the side of teams? Like, can you be more than just upset city team? Like, if you want to be more than that, you can't just be giving upsets. You can't be, if I'm not mistaken, can't be getting road raced by Pacific at home. Like, no. That sticks out to me right there. Like, can Pacific beat you? Sure. But like the way it happened, the manner in which it happened, and the manner when you look back at the examples of LMU not taking care of business on their own prior to that point, it all bogs together, and it really makes it hard for me to justify saying anything more than I already have. So I understand, for a lot of programs, I'm very hard on them, but that's because if you want to be good, you got to go show me. And for me, if you have an upstart year and you surprise and then you have more than 20 wins, good. I'm glad you could do that, because now I can understand where the program's going, the trajectory in which it's continuing to go on, and then say, okay, you could be a crown team, you could be an NIT team, you can eventually be an NCAA tournament team. But when you've been so like wobbly and stagnant and just kind of still not being able to get out of your own way, as opposed to going out and taking the moment, that's what turns me off. And that's one thing I think for me, as if this gets thrown in my face by the end of the year from what LMU does, go ahead. I mean, the sample size is too much to ignore for me to justify anything else.